Hello beautiful friends, my name is Kathleen and welcome to my little slice of the internet. And here in this space we talk about all things bookish, and today I am going to be sharing with you all the books that I am hoping to read this coming March. So let's jump into it. So first things first, I have a stack of library holds that I have got to work through because these are all due like either on the 6th or the 8th. And I have a massive stack of books, as you can see, that I am trying my best to work through. So let's talk about these first, because a lot of these have some anticipated releases that I have just been itching and so eager to get my little hands on. First up, we have Good Dirt by Charmaine Wilkerson, which is one of my anticipated releases of 2025. And yeah, I definitely need to get this book finished because it's due on the 8th. But this story is about the synopsis for this story is, when 10-year-old Abby Freeman heard the gunshot, time stopped. When she saw her brother Baz on the floor surrounded by shattered pieces of a treasured heirloom, her life felt shattered as well. The crime was never solved. Ever since, the Freemans, one of the only Black families in a well-to-do enclave in New England, have dreaded becoming the center of another media frenzy. But when now grown, Abby's high-profile romance falls apart, that's exactly what happens. Abby flees to France only for her past to follow. As she processes the shock, she begins to think about the other loss her family suffered that day. The stoneware jar that had been in their family for generations, brought north by an enslaved ancestor. Soon, Abby realizes that the handcrafted piece held more than just her family's history. It might also be the key to claiming a new future. So, yeah, I'm currently have started this. I'm not that far in, but definitely have to read it for this month. Next up, we have another book that I have been on pins and needles and have been itching to get my hands on since like October, and that is Immortal Dark by Tigist Girma. And let me tell you, I've started reading this and it is phenomenal, and it is definitely living up to the hype and the excitement and the anticipation so far. So the synopsis for this story: orphan heiress Kidan Adane grew up far from the arcane society she was born into, where human bloodlines gain power through vampire companionship. When her sister June disappears, Kidan is convinced a vampire stole her. The very vampire bound to their family, the cruel yet captivating Susinos Sagad. To find June, Kidan must infiltrate the elite Uxley University, where she must survive living with Susinos, even as he does everything he can to drive her away. It doesn't matter that Susinos' wickedness speaks to Kidan's own violent nature and tempts her to surrender to a life of darkness. She must find her sister and kill Susinos at all costs. When a murder mirroring June's disappearance shakes Uxley, Kidan sinks further into her ruthless underworld of vampires, risking her very soul. There she discovers a centuries-old threat, and June could be at the center of it. To save her sister, Kidan must bring Uxley to its knees and either break free from the horrors of her own actions or embrace the dark entanglements of love and the blood it requires. So good. Next up, we have Water Moon by Samantha Soto Imbaro. And yeah, this is also due on the 8th. So the synopsis for this book is, on a back street in Tokyo lies a pawn shop, but not everyone can find it. Most will see a cozy ramen restaurant, and only the chosen ones, those who are lost, will find a place to pawn their life choices and deepest regrets. Hana Ishikawa wakes on her first morning as the pawn shop's new owner to find it ransacked, the shop's most precious acquisition stolen, and her father missing. And then into the shop stumbles a charming stranger, quite unlike its other customers, for he offers help instead of seeking it. Together, they must journey through a mystical world to find Hana's father and the stolen choice, by way of rain puddles, rides on paper cranes, the bridge between midnight and morning, and a night market in the clouds. But as they get closer to the truth, Hana must reveal a secret of her own and risk making a choice that she will never be able to take back. So this sounds really, really interesting. And from the little that I've read, it's good. Next up, we have The Stolen Queen by Fiona Davis. And I've started reading this one. It's a historical fiction and it is quite enthralling. So the synopsis for this is Egypt 1936. When Charlotte Cross is offered a coveted spot on an archaeological dig in Egypt's Valley of the Kings, she leaps at the opportunity. That is, until an unbearable tragedy strikes. New York City, 1978. 19-year-old Annie Jenkins is thrilled when she lands an opportunity to work for former Vogue fashion editor Diana Vreeland, who's in the midst of organizing the famous Met Gala, hosted at the museum and known across the city as the party of the year. Meanwhile, Charlotte is now leading a quiet life as the associate curator of the Met's celebrated Department of Egyptian Art. She's consumed by her research on Hathor, a rare female pharaoh dismissed by most other Egyptologists as unimportant. The night of the gala, one of the Egyptian art collection's most valuable artifacts goes missing, and there are signs of Hathor's legendary curse might be reawakening. Annie and Charlotte team up to search for the missing antiquity, and a desperate hunch leads the unlikely duo to one place Charlotte swore she'd never return: Egypt. But if they have any hope of finding the artifact, Charlotte will need to confront the demons of her past, which may mean leading them both directly into danger. This sounds good, and also, so far from what I have been reading of this book, it is good. Next up, we have another one of the books that is my anticipated releases of 2025 that I have just been so gooped, gagged, and excited about reading, and that is Death of the Author by Nnedi Okorafor, and this is amazing. Like, anytime that I pick up this book, I lose track of time because I am that immersed and that enthralled with the words on this page. They're transcendent. The synopsis for this goes as: disabled, disinclined to marry, and more interested in writing than a lucrative career in medicine or law, Zelu has always felt like the outcast of her large Nigerian family. Then her life is upended at her sister's lavish Caribbean wedding, when she's unceremoniously fired from her university job, and to add insult to injury, her most recent book is rejected by yet another publisher. With her career and dreams crushed in one fell swoop, she decides to write something just for herself. What comes out is nothing like the quiet literary novels that have peppered her unremarkable career. It's a far future epic where androids and AI wage war in the grown-over ruins of human civilization. She calls it Rusted Robots. When Zelu finds the courage to share her strange story, she does not realize she's about to embark on a life-altering journey, one that will catapult her into literary stardom, but also perhaps obliterate everything her book was meant to be. From Chicago to Lagos to the outer reaches of space, Zelu's novel will change the future not only for humanity, but also for the robots who come next. This book is amazing. I'm having so much fun reading it, and yeah, I gotta finish it. Next up, we have, for my physical TBR now, because I have like what, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, about 4 books for my physical TBR that I need to knock out. The first book is Local Woman Missing by Mary Kubica. This has been on my TBR multiple flipping times, and I am going to make good on my threat to read this book this freaking month. It's gonna get done. So the synopsis for this is: Shelby Tebow is the first to go missing. Then Meredith Dickey and her 6-year-old daughter Delilah vanish just blocks away from where Shelby was last seen, striking fear into their once peaceful community. After an elusive search that yields more questions than answers, the case eventually goes cold. Now, 11 years later, Delilah shockingly returns. Everyone wants to know what happened to her, but no one is prepared for what they'll find. And some people will stop at nothing to keep the truth buried. That sounds good. Can't wait to get in that. I do enjoy Mary Kubica's work. Next, we have If He Had Been With Me by Laura Nolan, which I was supposed to complete last month, but y'all, last month was crazy. All my library holes came through at once. It was chaotic, and I wasn't able to complete this like I wanted, so I'm definitely gonna prioritize completing it this month, as I do have a goal of completing one reread each month, and this one will satisfy that goal for this month. So So this story, if you have not heard of it and you weren't part of the phenomenon a couple of years ago, it follows Autumn and Finney. They are two young teenagers who grew up together and were the closest of friends until they kind of drifted apart due to kind of a misunderstanding. They drift apart and they're no longer close friends anymore, and they live these completely separate, different lives. But Autumn, of course, feels like she carries the secret of the fact that she still, in some ways, is in love with Finney and still daydreams about him and wants to be with him. And it's just following their friendship and their story and their growing up as and becoming the people that they become. And I don't know, this is such an interesting, poignant story. And I don't know, I really enjoy it, and I gotta finish it this month. Next up, we have one of my favorite fantasy series of the moment that I'm just gooped and gagged for, and that is Blood Marks by Tracy Deonn. This is the second installment of this series. As you all know, Oathbound comes out March the 4th, and I have got to get my hands on that because that's also going to be on my TBR for this month. But I need to read Blood Marks. I need to read Blood Marks so that I can read Oathbound and be completely caught up on this series. So in the Legendborn cycle, this series, we are following Bree Matthews as she is currently grieving the loss of her mother, and she decides, in order to kind of get away from the memories, get away from home and shake up her routine, to go study at the UNC Chapel Hill's program for like young teenage students around 16, where they could basically take college courses and get college credit and help them in their pursuit of higher education. It is while she is there that she basically discovers that there are demons, and that these demons, they're inflicting kind of like carnage on humanity, on humans, and that she stumbles into the discovery of the Legendborn, which are basically charged with defeating these evil beings and kind of restoring the balance between good and evil, light and dark. But she kind of becomes suspicious that maybe this had something to do with her mother's accident, and she decides to infiltrate the Legendborn so she can uncover the truth. And in doing so, she basically uncovers so much about who she actually is, about the Legendborn and what they truly stand for, and all of these different things kind of come to head and leads her to these wild discoveries and will change her life and her trajectory forever. This series is amazing. It is beautifully written. I love Bree Matthews. I love the complexity of everything that's going on, that's happening, and I'm eager to dive into the second installment, and I'm eager to get my hands on the third installment, Oathbound, which I'm going to go ahead and talk about now because that is also going to be on my TBR for this month, because I just need to get into this series. I have been eagerly and anxiously awaiting the release of Oathbound, and I have eagerly and anxiously awaited getting into this book. So I cannot wait to tackle that. Next up, I'm going to start yet another fantasy series because I just cannot stay away from series, apparently. I'm going to be diving into Tomi Adeyemi's Children of Orisha trilogy, which is Children of Blood and Bone, the first installment of this trilogy, and I'm super excited about diving into this. I have seen nothing but good things, and I am excited to get geeked and gooped and gagged and just all the things for a new fantasy series. So the synopsis for this goes as: Zele Adebola remembers when the soil of Orisha hummed with magic. Burners ignited flames, tiders beckoned waves, and Zele's reaper mother summoned forth souls. But everything changed once magic disappeared. Under the orders of a ruthless king, the Magi were targeted and killed, leaving Zele without a mother and her people without hope. Now Zele has one chance to bring back magic and strike against the monarchy. With the help of a rogue princess, Zele must outwit and outrun the crown prince, who is hell-bent on eradicating magic for good. Danger lurks in Orisha, where snow leopards prowl and vengeful spirits wait in the waters. Yet the greatest threat may be Zele herself, as she struggles to control her powers and her growing feelings for an enemy. So I might have butchered the names. I haven't researched and looked into the correct pronunciation. But yeah, I still am excited and can't wait to read this. Well, next up, this is actually a library book that I have renewed like 3 times now. And that is Frederick Backman's Us Against You, which is yet again another series that I'm in the midst of that I need to flip and complete because I just can't. I don't know what it is to be a series. I just can't stop, won't stop. So in this series, which Bear Town is the first book in this series, we are basically following this small hockey town who really relies on the kind of the notoriety and the income that comes in due to the junior hockey team's success. And they're banking on them winning this playoff season and how that's going to catapult this town into new layers to get more sponsorship deals, to basically bring in more money, to bring in more jobs, and to help the economic stability of this community. But unfortunately, a tragic event happens involving their star player of the hockey team, and it just shakes this town to its core. It pits people against each other and just causes a rift and causes a lot of dissension. And we are following all the things that happen because of this. And it's a beautiful character-driven story and exploration of some very heavy yet important themes and topics, and I enjoy this series. I love it. It made me bawl my eyes out, and I'm anxious to continue forward with the series and find out what happens to these cast of characters. Next up, I have a ebook that I want to read from Kindle Unlimited. It is called A Fate of Ivory and Onyx by Ojuna Brown, and I'm excited to read this. It has been on my radar for some months, and I really need to get this read. So the synopsis for this is, when 24-year-old Amira must provide for her family, she finds herself making a bargain with a clever witch that could possibly alter her life forever. In her pursuit to return home, she crosses paths with a savior, a powerful fairy, that transports her to an alternate realm she never knew existed. In a quest entwined with dark magic and immortality, Amira begins to question everything she has ever known. She'll need to remain the fighter she's always been, while piecing together the truths that are hidden in the shadows of Solaris, if she wants to survive. With each day that passes, she finds herself more attached to her new surroundings, including the white-winged fae that unexpectedly entered her life. Will she become a permanent part of his lavish world, or return to a life of poverty in the mortal realm to reunite with her family? Amira's decision won't be easy, deciphering between lust and fates. So this sounds very, very interesting, and I cannot wait to finally read this book. The next 2 books are library holds that I have in my library that I have to pick up fairly soon that I have on my March TBR for this month. The first one is Dust by Allison Stein. So the synopsis for this story goes as, in this haunting, speculative coming-of-age novel about finding your place in an unforgiving environment, a partially deaf teen questions everything she knows about family, love, and her future. After her father has a premonition, Thea and her family move to the bloodless valley of southern Colorado, hoping to make a fresh start. But the rivers are dry, the crops are dying, and the black blizzards of Colorado have returned. Much like the barren land, Thea feels her life has stopped growing. She is barely homeschooled, forbidden from going to the library, and has no way to contact her old friends, all due to her parents' fear of the outside world's dangerous influence. But to make ends meet, Thea is allowed to work at the cafe in town. There she meets Ray, who is deaf. Thea, who was born hard of hearing, has always been pushed by her parents to pass as someone who can hear. Now with Ray secretly teaching Thea how to sign, she begins to learn what she's been missing. Not just a new language, but a whole community, and maybe even a chance at love. That sounds like a whole lot, and I'm excited to get into that. Next up, we have You Are Fatally Invited by Andre Pliego, and yeah, I'm excited to read this one. So the synopsis says, an exclusive thriller writers retreat hosted on a private island turns lethal when one of the authors is found murdered in this twisty locked room mystery. When renowned anonymous author J.R. Alastor hires former aspiring writer Mia Del Angel to host a writing retreat at his private manor off the coast of Maine, she jumps at the chance, particularly since she has an axe to grind with one of the invitees. The guest list? 6 thriller authors, all masters of deceit, misdirection, and mayhem. Confess the crimes, survive the tropes. Alastor and Mia have masterminded a week of games, trope-fueled riddles, and maybe a jump scare or two. The perfect cover for Mia to plot a murder of her own. But when a guest turns up dead, and it's not the murder she planned, Mia finds herself trapped in a different narrative altogether. One by one, you'll lose your turn. With a storm cutting off the island and the body count rising, Mia must outwit a killer who knows literally every trick in the book, until only one of us remains. So that sounds quite interesting. Cannot wait to dive into that. And lastly, on my TBR, I want to read an Amazon First Read, which is part of like this kind of program or initiative that they offer to Prime members, that you get to select a book before it's formally like released, and you get to choose from a selection of books. And I don't know which one I'm gonna choose yet. I'll probably do a video or a blog about that later on, but that's also on my list of books to read this month. So that pretty much covers all the books that I'm itching and anxious and I need to get into this month of March. I am super excited for all that this is going to bring this month, because February was, while a chaotic reading month, it was definitely an enjoyable reading month, and I'm looking forward to what March will bring. So what books are you excited to read this March? Let me know in the comments below, and don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe if you haven't, and I will see you next time. Bye.